Hello, welcome astrologers. How are you doing? This video is, as the title suggests, your Sun in Virgo, Moon Aquarius report. Kind of reminds me of perhaps what Spock may have been. Or maybe he was a double Virgo. No, I've known double Virgos. Not quite like Spot. Anyways, so this report is, of course, in request, and if you want to request your Sun and Moon combination, you can do so by putting it in the comments, and I'll be sure to do yours as soon as I get to it. I'll put it on the list. I'm going to do all 144 combinations before the year is up. That's the goal anyways. So far I'm 2 for 2, 2 days, and I've done 2. Alright, so I'll be referencing some of the notes that I put down beforehand, so I'll be kind of looking at those while I'm also pretend looking at you. So when we talk about the sun, we're talking about living and how we proceed through the world from a psychological standpoint. So the sun is the ego, your true will, and also where you feel wounded or how you help heal wounds in others. Not quite like Chiron. Like Chiron is the wounded healer, but it can tell a lot about how our confidence is built from an early standpoint, right? So Virgo is a mutable sign, so it definitely has adaptable qualities, and it's Earth. And Earth, of course, is also changeable, perhaps not as perceivably changeable as a water sign like Pisces. But because its ruler is Mercury, for now anyways, until maybe they confirm some other dwarf planet, it is considered to be a sign that can polarize fairly well. And literally to say that it is mercurial. So the qualities of Virgo can, of course, change a little bit, basically just depending on where their confidence levels are at the moment. So we'll talk about Virgos when they don't feel confident or very good about themselves. Their tendencies are towards judgmental and overly critical behavior, and also not feeling comfortable or confident expressing emotion, particularly any emotions that they deem to be impure. This generally happens when the Virgo has not been validated for their abilities to serve, their adherence to duty, for their loyalty, for their quick and orderly mind, and their ability to, take facts and figures and situations and components and be able to put them together in the best way possible, whatever the goal is. If you want somebody that can minimize space in your closets, ask a Virgo. If you want someone who can take something apart and put it back together, even if it's not something they're terribly practiced at, it is something that most Virgos are pretty adept at. If you want somebody to clean your kitchen to the utmost standards of cleanliness, then ask a Virgo. Not saying they're going to enjoy it. Some Virgos enjoy cleaning and it's therapeutic. Sometimes it's just a compulsion, right? So when a Virgo hasn't felt validated, it's either through, at some point in their childhood. Now, we talk about the moon developing mostly in the very beginning years up to about age 7, and the sun starts to develop a little bit more as we get more willful, which is generally when the terrible twos pop up, but a lot in adolescence as well. So if at any time during childhood or adolescence, and sometimes this even carries on into the late teens and early 20s, because we're still quite vulnerable at those ages, their tendency would be, particularly if the relationship between the Virgo and the person that hasn't really validated them was a close one, emotions are generally the first to get cut off. And of course, then the carping remarks and the nagging remarks might come out, depending on, of course, if the Virgo is an expressive being, because if not, if there's not more prominent figuring, let's say a Virgo with Leo rising, for instance, would be more prone, or Aries rising, to say what's on their mind. A Virgo may silently judge somebody in 10,000 words or more, and the other person might never know. Now, they could sense it. Virgos tend not to be particularly great at hiding their feelings from a person who's very perceptive. But if you combine this with the quirky Aquarius moon, where the moon is where the emotional security and unconscious reactions are, and they can be very cool and calculated in any air moon sign, but in particular Aquarius. So you might think you're dealing with a robot if this solar Virgo lunar Aquarian has not really tapped into their inner, true self, power, whatever you want to call it. So anyone that's been wounded and feels hurt, feels unappreciated, has been taught in some way that emotions are messy and yucky and they only get you in trouble, this is certainly the combination that could bring about, I'm not going to say that it's going to create a sociopath. There's a lot that would go into something like that, and I don't know any astrologers that would diagnose somebody mentally just from an astrological chart either. But perhaps you could picture somebody, coming up to, let's say, the most recent British adaptation of Sherlock Holmes and crying uncontrollably and emotionally distraught. What would that rendition of Sherlock Holmes do? It might be kind of reviled and might even attempt like a there, and then sort of recoil back in horror. And that is probably the most extreme version of the emotional bottling up of this sign combination. Now, that is not all doom and gloom. It is not all doom and gloom. So let's start to get into some of the more evolved aspects of this combination. So you might know from my Lunar Aquarian video that I've done before about just Moon in Aquarius that they're particularly adept at observing human emotion, and in fact could be considered lifetime students of the human psyche. Other people are fascinating to them, and they become rather good at predicting behavior, and are particularly good at creating, let's say, characters for books or plays or for TV shows, and are very adept at like character-driven type creative endeavors, and also tend to be attracted to those as well in terms of the forms of entertainment that they imbibe. And so a lunar Aquarian, when they were younger, because there is a very rebellious streak in Aquarius in general, may have been prone to sort of unpredictable shows of emotion, like crying one second, angry the next, temper tantrums. And depending on how these were handled, based very much on the parent's reaction, and because it's the moon, we're going to talk about mostly the mother or the mother figure, whoever had most of the mother-associated duties. They might start learning that, emotions are messy and nobody really seems to like them, and I tend to get in trouble for them. So remember, Aquarius is a fixed sign, so if you tell them that, these aren't good, you shouldn't be showing these, they're going to go to the extreme opposite and decide that from that point on that, you know what, we're going to stay cool and calm and collected, because it seems to be that people respond to that better, and I don't have to deal with their BS or their reactions to me. And sometimes that will occur. The good news is, if you have an Aquarian moon child, okay? And they're pretty rebellious, and they keep that rebellious streak. It usually means that they feel safe and secure in the home. And you have to remember that Virgo and Aquarius are like in conjunct signs, and so if they're really close degree-wise in the chart, this will be more prevalent, meaning like, Sun is 26 degrees, Moon is 25 degrees, or something like that. But in general, you'll just see there are two signs that don't quite understand each other. There is an intellectual thread that combines that brings them together, but in terms of how they view society and how they should act, the Virgo generally wants to be orderly and to do what they're told, and they also can be really good at telling others how to do what they're supposed to do. And they want to, they're sort of people pleasers, but it's not quite like that, like a Libra. It's more that they want to be seen as rule followers, or somebody that listens, or haha, look at me, I listen and I don't get in trouble and you do. They might even be really good at deflecting blame and trouble when they're younger, if they have siblings. So if you have a little Virgo child, just be careful. If they're smart, and they usually are, they might very well be getting their siblings in trouble for the things that they're doing. They do want to be seen as the golden child in certain ways. But when you put the lunar Aquarian in and there's a rebellious streak, now you have to kind of see what is going to be more prominent here. So, referring back to what I mentioned, if the lunar Aquarian child grows up in an environment where they don't have to guess about their placement in the family, like they know that they're loved and they're cared for, it doesn't mean that it's a perfect environment. A lunar Aquarian would, as a child, generally resent being hovered over or being doted on or being restricted in any way. But the more comfortable they feel, the more likely they are to rebel, because they understand innately human nature, and they understand that, my parents are going to love me no matter what, but, I just don't agree with this, and I'm just going to let them know. And that's, in a way, it's a it's a good sign. It means that they're comfortable with you, and they understand that there will always be a place for them in an unconditional, loving sort of way. If the lunar Aquarian grows up with some sort of unpredictable behavior from one or both parents, or one parent is really, really weak compared to the other, like they're being abused by the other parent or just sort of squelched in general, then the Virgo servant and duty master might take over at that point, and they might try to protect the weaker parent, or because they're not comfortable with their place in the family, because they don't know, they don't really feel loved, maybe their intelligence is not rewarded, for instance, or their ability to figure things out, their enhanced abilities, maybe they're far advanced than their peers in certain things. If their mind and their mental abilities are not encouraged early on and not recognized, or if even they're made fun of for some reason, then you're going to see that lunar Aquarian retreat a little bit, and the solar Virgo might come out and try to earn acceptance by being the perfect child that they may never be, depending on the situation they're in. So, and eventually the Aquarius moon does pop out sometime, usually around adolescence, no matter what. And what this combination does in a really fun way is generally Virgos come across as kind of proper and pure. Again, this depends on certain other things going on chart-wise, but for the most part, there's a general presentation of decorum and respect, and the Aquarian moon really kind of likes to shock people. And so unless, that moon is stifled in some way by other aspects, through certain planets or whatever, or maybe it's, hiding somewhere in the 12th house unaspected, but either way, there is a desire to want to go against the grain in some way. And if their upbringing is more traditional, they might brag later about bucking that tradition, and if their upbringing is more non-traditional and their family is pretty like different, and they go against the grain, then they'll brag about how their family's so awesome, and they go against the grain. So unless the lunar Aquarian is particularly comfortable around other people right off the bat, like let's say they also had Aquarius rising, which placed moon in the first house, and so their moon was really close to their identity with the world. For the most part, you're going to meet the Virgo with the moon in Aquarius, and you're not going to know right away. And then when they get comfortable with you, they're going to shock the hell out of you. They're going to look at you and be like, what happened to this pure and proper person? Like, where did the alligator clips come from? And, oh my God, I didn't know that they knew what a vibrator was. Or, so it'll be really fun when you take the French tickler out and you start really kind of letting loose and getting your shocking sense of humor and letting people know the crazy things that you kind of like or do or think about. So in the workplace, that is where Virgo will generally shine, and they generally will grow a spine if they're not a particularly confident person. Either way, if they see a way of doing things better, they will say something. If they see people being lazy, they will generally call it out in some way. Very rarely does a Virgo stay quiet when they see a more logical, streamlined, and or productive way of doing things. And that Aquarius moon actually gives them the ability to be a really level-headed leader, although neither placement really gives them the desire to be in charge. But because of their ability to observe and predict other people's behavior and not react out of knee-jerk responses, and there generally wouldn't be a lot of favoritism going on, it really helps them when it comes to managing people. But they'd probably rather manage projects and timelines and organization and things like that. But so there's a great aptitude for both if they were to be put in both situations. And so, hold on a second. Sorry. Okay, so let's go back to the Virgo Sun, and then we're going to put them back together again, and we're going to wrap this up. So, I've had the pleasure, you could use that adjective if you like, of observing many Virgos in my lifetime. I'm a Pisces, and I tend to attract the crap out of them. I also have Saturn in Virgo. So I do believe that, we do have opposites attract in multiple ways, and all the way down to, reasons you could read through physics and ways that are indescribable. So you could sort of put the Virgo solar person as a combination of a Purist and a Puritan, and then there's whatever percentage they are of either, along with their other personality nuances. That will help give you a better idea of the Virgo Sun. So let's say that the Puritan is the person that avoids anything that they regard as physically unwholesome or emotionally threatening or mentally undigestible. Like, they won't read tabloids, and they're not going to get involved in that icky, sticky, like lovey-dovey situation over there. And they're not gonna have that one-night stand, And sometimes these people are seen as really picky or squeaky clean or goody two-shoes, and that could genuinely be who they are. But very often, when this extreme is exemplified, it usually means that they're trying to avoid coming to terms with something. So it could very well be that what they seek to keep pure is what they actually really want to explore and see what it's all about, but they've been taught in some way, shape, or form that it's not good. And again, they're more concerned with following the rules sometimes, or adhering to society's standards, or a religion's standards, or a familial standard. So then we'll talk about the Purist. The Purist is confident in what is good for them, and knows what doesn't aid them as well. And they know their own purity so well that they're not concerned about being around or influenced by things that they might consider impure or people that they might consider, bad influences. This can work in sort of a domineering sense, which is you must be like me to validate my life choices. Or more of the empowering sense, which is, you can try this if you see that it's working for me, but I don't really care if you do it or not. I'm still going to hang out with you, and that's that. So the latter situation is a purist who is empowered and is confident in what they're doing for themselves. They don't feel the need to evangelize it. And the former purist is trying to exert their will to validate their life choices. And of course, there's, these aren't, hard and fast qualities, but just think about as a Virgo, if you're listening to this as a Virgo, when have you espoused any of these qualities? And when you did, were you trying to compensate for something? Was it, very much like you felt small or you felt unsure about certain things? It's time for some wine. Sorry, wine break. I'm surprised it's taken me 21 minutes. So, often how the purist and the Puritan sort of mesh in the Virgo personality, and this isn't always true. There's never any hard and fast rules, but with the influence of the moon in Aquarius, I find this would be probably 10 times more true. But the purist personality, the one that that doesn't feel like oh no, I'm fine, and this is the way I do things, and it's okay. I can be around all that stuff. It's not a big deal. They might become involved with life on a mental and physical level. But then the Puritan side, the one that just wants to eschew all things that are unsavory, might be uninvolved on the emotional level. And of course, with this particular permutation of these different sides of Virgo is especially prominent, or more likely, I should say, if you have Aquarius moon. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything bad or good. There's really not a lot that's inherently bad or good. There's certainly a lot to be taken advantage of here. So let's go with, I'm going to go with just the blunt, short phrases to tell you the potential pitfalls, and then we'll go right into the boons of having this combination, because there's a lot. And then you kind of get to decide how it fits in with you, right? And remember, you're the decider of that. You're the decider. Anyways, so these are just sort of blunt statements. They sound a little black and white, but I don't believe in black and white. It's just more to make things short and to the point, and then let you fill in the blanks the way you want to. Okay? So, Solar Virgo, Lunar Aquarian, living through analyzing, security through liberating. So, we're talking about somebody who generally isn't going to express a lot of possessiveness or jealousy, especially from the Aquarius moon sign, but Virgos in general don't tend to exhibit that quality at all unless there's some hard Scorpio stuff going on somewhere else. So there is, a love of freedom that can feel to others like detachment. So there's an avoidance of dealing with deep emotional issues, probably from things that were learned early on. And they can be stubborn just for the sake of it, highly intelligent, and can outsmart and outwit most others in a debate, but sometimes they're actually winning just because they're pontificating their opponent to death, especially if Mercury is in Virgo. They can have unpredictable internal mood swings that result in opinions and lifestyle changes shifting very often. Like, oh, this is what's right for me. This is correct. This is pure. This is what I'm going to do. And then, like, 10 months later, they're doing something almost entirely oppositional to that, but with still the same strong beliefs that, and not that that's right or wrong, but it could be sort of jarring to people on the outside, right? They could become a bit evangelical when they found a lifestyle or activity that they really enjoy, thinking that everybody should be doing this. They could be a great listener to others, but not really hearing people, they're not always ready to butt in, and they're not always looking for their turn to talk next, but they also may not truly hear what's really behind the words sometimes. They can be too hard on themselves and others, working too hard, trying too hard to get the right answers for life instead of consulting their instincts and their feelings, being too picky about the people that they decide to associate with because they're not meeting some standards of emotional purity or physical cleanliness or something to that degree. And also, this particular combination could get ill quite easily because there's a tendency to self-criticize and under-emote. And you don't emote, if you don't let your emotions out of your body on a regular basis, you will become diseased. And the last thing would be doomed to understand human nature so well, but also to express it so poorly. All right, we're going to end with the good stuff because it's important. The good stuff is always inherently there. Exceptionally good person from which to seek advice. Measured responses to loved ones regarding emotionally charged situations. So even though the Virgo tendency is to judge, with a properly expressed Virgo, you can get a really good, like, pro and con list along with the Aquarian moon that does not react or judge you for your decisions. And in fact, if you go against the grain a little bit, they might even feel a little swell of, yeah, go for it for you, right? They're adept at discerning relationships and situations that may be harmful or helpful. They're good at fine-toothed combing of details, exceptionally good writing, especially of character-driven stories due to their innate understanding of human nature. They're, they can learn quite well through their love of information and science, especially for the Aquarian side, of the inextricable connection to body, mind, and spirit, or soul, or whatever you want to call that, and the nurturing of all three. When they're really in tune with who they are, they can use their body as a barometer of their psychological condition. I mean, that is true with most people, but especially for Virgo. For Virgo, the mind and the body are exceptionally connected, and they're especially sensitive to the stress and to whatever it is that they're not doing for themselves. Their body will pick it up very quickly. They have a non-possessive emotional nature. They're independent thinkers and doers. They're adept in social situations. They can be honest without being cruel or mean. And overall, I would love to be friends with, I mean, any combination, because I always see all of the positive, lovely, awesome stuff that can come out of it. But really, I would like to have a glass of wine with you, Sun Virgo, Lunar Aquarius. I think we could learn a lot from each other as a solar Pisces, lunar Sagittarian. And I would definitely want to have you as a friend and a colleague. You could work for me anytime. I think it's fantastic. So we're going to wrap this up here. If you want your Sun and Moon combo done next, but you don't know what it is, go to astro.com. It's super easy to make an account. You really don't have to put much information in at all. Put in your birth date, time, and place. If you don't have time, it sometimes doesn't make a difference on the moon sign, but I find about 20% of the time it will, because the moon does change every like 2.5 or so days, right? So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know in the comments. And the next one we'll have up is, drum roll, somebody do a drum roll. I don't have any drums. Will be Sun in Pisces, Moon in Aquarius. So I only have like 2 other requests after that. I really need more, so please comment your requests. I hope you have enjoyed the video. Clearly I could have gone on another 28 minutes, but you know, we got to keep these things short, you know, sometimes. So anyways, cheers.